Talking about another chapter of Lord of the Rings and my big reread here. This time I'm talking about Flotsam and Jetsam. In this chapter, we basically get the big backstory as to what happened to Isengard, why did they come up upon it all destroyed. We know it has something to do with the Ents, but we don't know the exact details here. And Merry and Pippin are going to tell it all to us in a tell don't show kind of way. But like I've talked about in the past with other characters who are recalling events, it's not done like it's just an exposition dump. Rather, it's done with full descriptions and dialogue and all this stuff. So it feels like you're there, even though it's something that's already happened. But before Merry and Pippin get into that, first they have to talk a lot about pipeweed again. Like they just can't get off the subject of the fact that they found pipeweed in Saruman's private stores or whatever. And so they're just like, hey, Gimli, we brought an extra pipe. We don't know why, but hey, take a hit off it. So, once again confirming that they are the biggest stoners in all of Middle-earth. And then they get into the flashback here. Now, there are some contrivances which really get into the fact that Tolkien wants it to feel like you're in the scene instead of two characters telling you about a scene. Because, for example, at one point, Merry and Pippin are on Treebeard's back, looking at Isengard's army as it pours out towards Helm's Deep. They're pretty distant to it, but Merry is talking about being able to make out individual faces and the expressions and all this stuff, and it's just like, does he have binocular eyes? This doesn't make any sense, but anyway, you can kind of forgive it because, it's exciting, and sure, it doesn't have much tension because you know how it's going to turn out and all this stuff. It's totally opposite to the movies, where you're with the characters as they're about to do this. You don't know what the result is going to be, but in the books, it's already a foregone conclusion. The Ents destroy everything, and it's so badass. They're ripping orcs to pieces in their hands like they're made out of paper. They're like smashing them on the ground. They are seemingly invulnerable to anything that isn't fire, and none of them end up getting burned, so there are no casualties on the Ent side. They're like, one of my favorite parts that we don't see in the movies is they're like sticking their branch hands against the rock, and like their branches shoot into the rock and destroy them in the way that like a tree will pull apart a rock if it's given 100 years to work on it or whatever. But in this, it's happening within seconds, so it's really cool. You're wondering kind of why the Ents didn't get involved before when they were so capable. But yeah, it's a really good chapter once it gets going. Like I said, it's kind of weird that Tolkien does it all in flashback as opposed to playing it out in real time to amp up the tension, but still, it works. So yeah, this is a pretty memorable chapter for sure. Follow along as I continue my Lord of the Rings reread.